Pass long. Left one is over. Steelers touchdown.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of StillCurtain.com. And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Shayne Kubas, who does copy editing for Still Curtain and for Fin Fanatic. And so he got to cover the Steelers and the Dolphins as they played each other on Monday night in Week 15. Obviously, we have some huge Dolphins news coming out of this game that we're going to talk about here in just a second, Shayne. We're going to get to the Steelers-Dolphins, our notes from Week 15 on Monday Night Football. We're going to share our predictions for the Steelers versus Lions game. Another huge game coming up here for Pittsburgh in Week 16. And we're also going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, what he's done over the last two games to what he did in the 5 previous games, and is that sustainable? But Shayne, let's start by talking about Steelers win over the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, 28-15. Even though they won by multiple scores, wasn't even as close as the score would have indicated. At halftime, it was a really dull game. And then Pittsburgh really poured it on in the third quarter, early in the fourth, to take a huge lead in this game and then never look back.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much a war of attrition in the first half where the defenses were doing their best to just kind of keep both offenses at bay. And it worked for the most part. You know, the Steelers had to really work for their only touchdown on that Connor Hayward sneak at the end of the first half. But yeah, in that second half, the floodgates just kind of opened. I think the Dolphins defense just eventually cratered. They just couldn't keep up with what the Pittsburgh Steelers were doing, especially with Tua. Yeah, he didn't do much for them. The fourth quarter looked great, but it didn't matter anymore when you're down 28-3 at the time that you started playing well. So.
Oh, and it was the game of weird records as well, too.
Yes.
The first game ever in NFL history, which is surprising, but the first game ever that 2 tight ends scored rushing touchdowns. They were both on the Steelers. It's never been done by even teams, tight ends on opposite teams. And so there was that. Mike Tomlin moved into 10th place all time on the wins list. He was previously tied with that, and now he owns sole possession of 10th place. And interestingly, Shayne, only 2 games back of the great Chuck Noll. Steelers win out, then Tomlin would move past Chuck Noll into 9th place on that list. And so something to keep an eye on there. Shayne, let's talk about, before we dive deeper into Steelers Dolphins, let's talk about some of the other news around the NFL this week. And in Week 15, Shayne, we got to watch a slate of games, kick back, feet up before Monday Night Football, watch some ex-Steelers play, and there were some really ugly performances, and eyes were on Kenny Pickett, not because anybody thought that Eagles-Raiders would be a good football game, but because Kenny Pickett, former first-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, people wanted to see how he was going to do. This is only his second NFL start since leaving the team after the 2024 season, or during the 2024 offseason, and it did not go well. It did not go well, Shayne. In fact, it was so bad that Pickett had 29 net passing yards on 29 dropbacks. And I think it might have been 31 because he rushed twice on those, but that's really bad. That's really, really bad. His team's offense, the Raiders' offense, managed 75 total yards on 42 plays. 1.8 yards per play, 3 of 12 on third down, 0 points scored in a 31-0 blowout. Shayne, did you get a chance to watch Pickett at all this week?
I certainly did. I had to watch this game, not only because it was Kenny Pickett starting for the Raiders and I wanted to see how that would go, but because I was curious. The Eagles have struggled so much recently. I was like, can the Raiders make this a game? Can they make this interesting? And the answer immediately, no. Absolutely not. At no point did it feel remotely interesting. And again, Pickett was about as inefficient as you possibly can be in an NFL game where you actually play most of the snaps, if not all of them. It was horrendous. If I remember correctly, I believe his yards per attempt on this game was somewhere around the 2.4, 2.6 mark.
2.6, yeah.
And it's just, you can't play quarterback like that. That's not backup quarterback play. That might not be third string quarterback play, depending on what team you play for. I guarantee the Niners could go 4 deep before they'd start having quarterback play like that with their offense. It's just not good. And I know the Raiders are bad and Geno Smith's been bad and the whole thing. But it's one thing to be bad and one thing to do literally nothing on the field, to basically be out there for no reason. That's kind of what it felt like for the Raiders offense all day.
Oh, it was bad. And obviously they're outmatched in terms of talent.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of coaching. the Raiders are just a bad team. Even when Geno Smith is playing, they're still a really bad football team, one of the worst in the league this year.
Mm-hmm.
But it couldn't have gone any worse for Kenny Pickett, who these are the results of all the drives in that Raiders game. Turnover on downs, punt, 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 interception, punt, punt, end of the ball game. And Shayne, if you're telling me, I mean, I don't want to, again, these guys are a different level. But I could probably go out there and put up 29 net yards in an entire game. It's just a couple screen passes. I mean, this is really, really low level football. And I think that he probably shouldn't get another chance after this. I mean, it was as bad as it gets. And I'm not sure he should be a backup quarterback in the NFL moving forward. Maybe a scout team quarterback is the career path after this. And this was his one opportunity to shine. Hasn't gotten only but one chance on Philadelphia last year to start. And then this game right here, not a good tryout for the rest of the league here as he tries to salvage his NFL career. Another one, Shayne, was George Pickens, who remains very quiet.
Recently, yeah.
Seen this guy put up phenomenal numbers, have brilliant stretches with the Cowboys already this season. But over the last 3 games now, Pickens has had 14 receptions on 28 targets for 158 yards. That's just 5.6 yards a target. He's fumbled twice. He has no touchdowns. And Dak Prescott, Shayne, has a passer rating of 37.5 collectively when targeting Pickens over the last 3 games. He has plummeted back down to earth. And it kind of reminds me of what he did in the final month of the season, in his last month of the member of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's tough with him because we know that this happens with him, and it's part of why he isn't here. And I can still understand the fans' frustration of like, look how talented this guy is. Look what you can do with him. And that's never been the question with him. Like, you can go back to our talks about him on this show. It was never a question of was he good or was he good enough to be the team's receiver one. It was always, is he going to be able to, when the moment requires it and when things aren't necessarily going his way, can he keep his head on and can he play good football when it matters most? So far, with the Cowboys trying to stay in playoff contention, as good as he's played previously, he has not done so in recent weeks.
Yeah, and it's not even just a matter of he's been bad, because I don't even think that that's fair to say over the last 3 games. He was bad against the Lions for sure, and his effort was greatly questioned in that game, as it should be, because we've seen it multiple times. The one that always comes to my head, Shayne, is the game against the Colts. I think it was 2 years ago. Just completely quit on the Steelers in terms of the blocking. Like, Jalen Ward had a walk-in touchdown, didn't touch anybody. Then the Dallas game last year, Sunday Night Football, the rain delays, horrible in that game. When he was on Pittsburgh, obviously. But yeah, I mean, you can't be quiet, though, when you're an investment like this. The Cowboys traded a 3rd and a 5th for you. You've been living up to the hype prior to this last 3-game stretch here, and then you just disappear. You disappear when you're in a contract year, and there's talks of him getting like $30 to $35 million a year in new money average because he's 24 years old. He's uber talented. And if he kept up that all-pro level production for a whole season, that's maybe what we're looking at. But, man, I would just, again, same questions we had on the Steelers. I would really question giving him that contract and what you're going to get out of it, because you just don't get it consistently. And it's hurt Dallas at times for sure. Let's bring it back to the Steelers here, Shayne. TJ Watt missed week 15, collapsed lung, dry needling. I went down a rabbit hole looking at some of this stuff.
Yeah.
How does this happen? What's going on here?
Fascinating is the
it
best
doesn't
way
seem like that should be an injury that you would get from the acupuncture there. But regardless, Shayne, he missed this week. Fortunately, the Steelers did just fine without him. Previous to that, he played 70 of 80 snaps in the week before, which is absurd because Nick Herbig needs to play more, and he did. Unfortunately, Herbig suffered a hamstring setback in this game. So now the Steelers are dealing with that. So the good news is TJ Watt is expected to play again this season. But as of now, as of the time we're recording this podcast, we don't know exactly when that's going to be. It could be this week. It could be next week. Could be in the season finale. But the Steelers, obviously, if they're going to have any chance, they need him back, not because he's the same TJ Watt that he was, but you have to have a healthy rotation you can deploy on the defensive line and not just stick 2 guys out there rushing the passer all game.
Yeah, like we definitely need TJ back. I know that we were successful without him against the Dolphins, but you can't, especially with Herbig now banged up too, like the rotation of edge rushers is so important in the NFL. And the Steelers already don't do it in the way that we like them to when everyone's healthy, let alone when no one is, essentially, except for Alex Highsmith right now and Jack Sawyer, I guess. Like, it just, you have to have a healthy rotation. Even if TJ's no longer the superstar player that he was, he is still, all in all, like in terms of total skill set, still probably this team's best edge rusher. You'd like him to be out there as soon as possible. It would be really nice, especially to have him this week. I don't expect that, obviously, but definitely week 18 and into the playoffs, if we do make it, he is going to need to be a part of this team for them to have the best chance they can.
Yeah, and if we're being honest, Shayne, what is it we know about the Steelers? What do they rely on? Splash plays. Who brings them better than anybody else still on the team is TJ Watt. And if they get into the playoffs this year, which we'll talk about that in a second, they might require a splash play from TJ Watt to get past the wild card round, or certainly past the divisional round, I would think. And so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But obviously, TJ Watt still an important piece of this defense, even if he is having a down year at age 31. Shayne, let's talk about Tua and the Dolphins now. The Miami Dolphins, after their, I would say, embarrassing loss to the Steelers on Monday Night Football. I mean, they were crushed for 3.5 quarters of the game, essentially, and Pittsburgh played prevent defense. They ended up scoring twice late in the game. So when you look at Tua's stats on paper, pretty respectable, but he did not have a good game. No. And this is not the first time he is hamstringing that team. And the Dolphins have decided to bench Tua Tagovailoa. And the reason that this is big, Shayne, is because he is due so much money. You can't get out of his contract for another 2 years. But it looks like they're going to just cut their losses, absorb a massive amount of dead cap hit, and move on from Tua after the season, kind of like the Broncos did with Russell Wilson. Is it the right call to bench him? And Quinn Ewers, who you were not a fan of, Shayne, is going to take his place. Is it going to be any worse with Quinn Ewers going forward?
So this is a very interesting conversation. So first of all, the right decision is absolutely to bench Tua, because he does nothing for you right now. He's not helping the offense. He's not furthering your ability to evaluate this football team. He's not helping Mike McDaniel out as a head coach at this point. He brings, unfortunately, right now, essentially nothing to the table. And he hasn't for really the majority of the last 2 years. That's just the reality of it. So benching him, no matter who it's for, it doesn't really matter to me who it would have been, but it makes sense for it to be yours. He's a rookie. You want to see him play, see if you have anything in him. We've seen late round rookies end up working out a little bit more recently with the Brock Purdy's of the world, things like that. But it absolutely had to happen. I mean, you watch that game, he's not an NFL quarterback, Tommy. He isn't. Like, you can't play quarterback with this amount of limitations physically. It was bad enough when he was playing well, right? Like, he had enough limitations when it was working. Now he's more limited than ever as both a thrower and a runner. I mean, the scramble where he didn't get the first down when Patrick Queen hawked him down, like, you have to, as an NFL quarterback in 2025, you have to be able to make that play. Like, outside of 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, who honestly might have had just as good of a chance to make that play as Tua did. Like, outside of him, if you're a starting quarterback in today's game, you have to be able to make that play. He can't do it. And at this point, again, I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to be the answer. Certainly, I didn't think that he was going to be an NFL quarterback, period. But at least you're going to get a chance to see if there's something there. He cannot be worse, in my opinion, because even if he makes a bunch of dumb decisions, that was always possible to it anyway. He might be able to push the ball downfield more and actually try to learn something about some of these receivers and some of the rest of the players on this team. It just had to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's absolutely no question. The Dolphins had to move on. They are toast at this point, now sitting at 6-8. They've been eliminated from playoff contention. So even if they win out, there's no possible way that they can make the tournament. You need to try something else. He's not an NFL caliber quarterback in terms of tools. I think that there's some other stuff that he does well. A couple of years ago when he was just firing off and completing 30 passes on quick slants, like, that's his game.
Yeah.
But without his superstar receivers and without a competent offensive line, and he just doesn't have anything to work with. The tool package is not there. And Shayne, I feel bad for the Dolphins in general, because this is a conversation we don't hear about enough. Being in Miami and then having to play games in the North in December, January, it's just not fair, really. It's like you're going from a different climate. Joey Porter Sr. just talked about this. you go from a different climate, because he had played in Pittsburgh and then he went to Miami. He said it makes you soft. And that's coming straight from Joey Porter. Who was anything but soft.
It does naturally
and so,
have that effect. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're going from, and not that it's hot in Miami this time of year, but it's a completely different environment when you go and you play in ice ball football up in the north. And I think that's a disadvantage the Dolphins will always have, unless they get a first round bye somehow and they can host games throughout the playoffs. They're always going to have a major disadvantage there. Miami has lost now 12 straight games when the weather is under 40 degrees. And and it certainly doesn't help that you don't have a quarterback who has an arm that can cut through the wind either. So,
well, that's the thing is that they could do to mitigate that issue, they haven't really done until this year when they started to lean on the run game more. And it just didn't work out for them against the Steelers for a multitude of reasons. But you do need a quarterback that can play in the elements, that has the physical capabilities of dealing with those conditions. They have not had that in a very long time. And that's something that probably has to change if they want to make any meaningful strides.
All right, Shayne, let's talk about another former Aaron Rodgers teammate here. Allen Lazard hit the free agent market upon his request, and it makes you wonder. I mean, is that not the first thing your mind went to, Shayne? It's like, all right, whose idea is this? And when's he going to end up on the Pittsburgh Steelers? Obviously, Rodgers played with Lazard in Green Bay, in New York with the Jets. Is he going to reunite with him again here? And my thing, Shayne, is I would just question why. Like, what on earth is the point of it? Do you have enough has-been receivers at this point? I mean, you literally just activated 2 weeks ago. You activated Valdez-Scantling, and you signed Adam Thielen. Do you need another one of those guys on the roster? And who would he take the place of? I guess it would have to be Scotty Miller. You're not benching Ben Skoranek, your best special teams gunner for that. You've already done it to Roman Wilson, who was the only receiver with upside outside of DK Metcalf on this team. So what are you doing here? And could he end up in Pittsburgh, Shayne?
He could, but also, like, again, no. We can't. There's not room for him right now, like you said. Realistically, they've already given him 2 veterans who can't play, and you can say all you want about MVS, but that was a coverage bust. Like, it's not like he's great.
It was,
anymore. Like, a good play call for sure, but it could have been anyone running that route. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. Yeah. It doesn't matter who. It
was so wide open. Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't matter. Unless, again, the thing with the moves they've already made at receiver is that clearly it just made Aaron more comfortable, which I would tell Aaron to get comfortable with the players he has that are better and stop, like, putzing around all the time. Is the best way I can describe it. But whatever. If it works, it works for right now, I guess. But I still would rather Roman Wilson be out there. Allen Lazard can't play. He couldn't play for a Jets team that has no Garrett Wilson at receiver. Like, they had to go trade for 2 guys to play receiver for them, so that way he wouldn't have to play for them. He brings nothing. What is this going to do? Like, it's not like we need him for blocking. We have 4 tight ends on the roster, so, like, this is just nonsense to me. If he ends up on this team, I don't even know what I'm going to say about it. There's nothing to talk about.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. If he ends up on the Pittsburgh Steelers, you would just say, what are we doing here? You've reached the point of complete desperation, or either that or just Rodgers is making all the calls, and the Steelers have made that very clear that
it's like
you can do what you want.
Don't be the Jets, man.
Don't be the Jets. And that's the problem is if you made a pros and cons list for Allen Lazard, pros, Aaron Rodgers connection, con, everything else. Can't get open, slow. There's nothing to get excited about at this stage of his NFL career. So we will see. We're probably talking about it for nothing because, again, the roster is full outside of getting rid of Scotty Miller, who Tomlin insisted that he needed over Roman Wilson as a backup punt returner, just in case something were to happen to Calvin Austin, which is just a bizarre reason to keep him active over Wilson, in my opinion, but is what it is. Shayne, let's talk about the AFC playoff picture here and where the Steelers fit into the mix after week 15. Now, it's not as encouraging as an outlook as we had hoped because what happened was the Steelers went from a 54% chance of making the playoffs all the way up to a 60% chance. And so it wasn't like this astronomical increase in odds. It would have been a big decrease the other way had they lost the game.
Yeah.
But now, because again, the Ravens won. They are still on their heels. The Steelers are only one game up. And so it can come down to tiebreaker scenarios if the Steelers don't maintain this lead. If they don't, technically right now, obviously they control their own destiny. They win out, they're in. There's a scenario where they can not win out and still get in if the Ravens lose to the Packers or the Patriots, which is very likely. I mean, those are two quality football teams. We'll see how things play out. As of now, Steelers 60% chance of winning their division, making the playoffs. Ravens 40% chance. So there's the whole 100% right there. We can see how much that will swing this week according to NFL.com. If the Steelers win this week, it'll increase their chances to a 75% chance. But again, a lot of this could come down to week 18 when the Steelers and Ravens play each other. And Shayne, if the season ended today, the Steelers would be hosting the LA Chargers for the wild card round of the playoffs. How would that make you feel?
We talked about it last week. It's probably one of the better options, and I still don't love it. Because Justin Herbert, I know he hasn't played well in the playoffs, but that dude scares me. Sorry. Like, he just does. Yeah. You can't, because against this defense that whenever they aren't getting just miraculous turnovers or playing two in the cold, doesn't look good most of the time. They just don't. And if you're telling me that I have to play Justin Herbert at any time, we've already seen it happen this year once. I don't love that. Maybe this version of Aaron Rodgers we've seen recently, and we'll talk about how he's doing, is enough to mitigate some of that. But I still don't love it. I don't really know if there's a matchup that's likely that I will love. So, but obviously that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to get excited about any of these ones because I know the AFC is not great this year, but the teams that are in the wild card race, the Chargers are the ones that I would want to play. Of the teams currently in there, the Colts are not in the wild card anymore. They're outside on the bubble. The Texans have the best defense in the league. They're red hot right now. The Bills have Josh Allen. No, thank you. We've seen that play out.
I don't need that again several years at this point.
So the Chargers is probably your best bet still. If the goal is to get past the wild card round, win a playoff game, and then see where things go from there. But none are particularly great options. Shayne, let's break down the Steelers. Before we do, you are tuned into the Steel Curtain podcast, where Steelers fans come to talk, celebrate, debate. For more coverage, hit up steelcurtain.com, powered by the passionate fans at Fansided. Be sure to check out our written work, steelcurtain.com. New content dropping every single day. All right, Shayne, Steelers, Dolphins. Let's run through our notes really quick here because there are a few players that I certainly wanted to highlight from this game. Aaron Rodgers is one of them. We're going to talk about him in more detail in just a little bit, but another really strong game overall. Obviously, this is what you want to see. Nothing's more important than the quarterback position in football. And so as long as your quarterback is playing well, you can kind of ignore your other roster flaws, your areas of weakness, because oftentimes that's enough. And so I think that's the one thing Steelers fans can really get excited about, at least recently, is the emergence of Rodgers, where that could take them from here if he continues to play that way.
Yeah, specifically if he continues to play the way that he has over the past 2 weeks. This, admittedly, big-time old man game. Like, very much like this is old man quarterback game. It just worked really well for him. Average up the target in this game, 3.6. But just completion percentage and general completion percentage, both very high, 85.2 actual completion percentage. Like, threw 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, nothing like that. This is what he probably needs to play like again and be able to get the same results out of in a playoff game. It's just not super reliable to play this type of quarterback, right? Because it just relies so heavily on everyone else making great plays for you. And they did in this game. DK Metcalf had obviously the awesome stiff arm. We'll talk about that probably in a little bit and get in the end zone. They had the busted coverage for MVS on the touchdown. Like, if that all happens, I think he can play pretty well playing this type of ball, but I do think we need to still see more of some of the stuff that he did against the Ravens, like the deep ball completions, being able to do that type of stuff more frequently than just the run after catch and quick game stuff.
Yeah, I agree completely. Rodgers finished the game 23 of 27, 224 yards, 8.3 yards an attempt, 2 touchdowns, a 125.9 passer rating in this game. He took care of the football. He was very efficient just in terms of completion percentage, like you said. Average up the target, still not where we want it to be, but I mean, this is the best version of this type of game manager, I think, that you can get if the Steelers insist on playing this way. When he did fire the ball, like we saw DK Metcalf on that, was a strike. I mean, and then again, when Steelers went empty and he recognized Freiermuth on the quick slant there, like those are the types of things we need to see more frequently from him.
Yes.
When you look at his passer rate or his passing chart from Next Gen Stats, not overly exciting because there wasn't a lot of stuff downfield again, but at least he was very efficient. That gave the Steelers a chance, and they moved the ball very well in the second half, albeit against the Dolphins defense. We'll talk about Rodgers more in just a little bit here. Shayne, let's go to the running backs. Again, another game where Kenneth Gainwell just simply outpaced Jaylen Warren. 13 carries for 80 yards for Gainwell compared to 12 for 33 for Jaylen Warren. Are we seeing a shift in the dynamic here, Shayne?
I'll tell you what, he might be this team's best offensive player sometimes, which I hate to say that because it's Kenneth Gainwell. No offense to Kenneth Gainwell, but he's over the past 5 games, he's had 3 games with over 100 scrimmage yards. He's outpaced Jaylen Warren in rushing yards over that time frame. He is certainly this team's most reliable receiver in terms of like getting checkdowns and keeping the chains moving. Outside of when DK is having his days and when Jaylen is healthy and running the ball well, there's not a better offensive player, especially in terms of a receiving threat and just overall threat. Darnell Washington obviously is his ability as a blocker and what he can do in the receiving game sometimes too. But in terms of generating offense, no one's doing it better than Jaylen is right now for this team.
Yeah, Gainwell is definitely having some of his best football in recent weeks. My complaint, Shayne, is that as a runner, I think that he's been very good recently.
Yeah.
As a receiver, it's just you're not efficient in terms of wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, regardless of who you want to compare them to. What did we say? It was like 4.3 yards a target on the season so far. He hasn't been efficient in that regard. But if you look at it as this is essentially a glorified run, like we're just tossing the ball over to Gainwell, it's a glorified run. That 4.3 yards a target becomes more respectable. In this game, caught all 7 targets for 46 yards, and that's fine. And you give him a boost out of the backfield from the receiving standpoint, kind of move the chain a few times there. Steelers spread the ball around a lot in this game, and outside of Gainwell, no receiver had more than 3 receptions. That included DK Metcalf. What do we have? 3, 6, 9, 10 receivers were targeted in this game. Roman Wilson wasn't one of them because he was inactive again. But I mean, the Steelers are, I mean, they're at least spreading the ball out. I guess if that's something that you want them to do, I would prefer that DK gets more than 3 targets in a game, but that's just me. I mean, Rodgers found a way to be efficient regardless.
Yeah. I think in this game, I'm okay with it because they didn't need more than that from him, right? But I think it's in the games where they clearly need offense and they cannot find a way to get him the football, or really anyone the football with any consistency. That gets me concerned because then it often is just checking it down to Kenneth or Jaylen or whoever, and that just isn't going to cut it against better teams. But I will say Gainwell was at 4.3 yards per target for a while. Now he's got it up over 5 on the season. He's been more efficient recently. I actually did an article for Still Curtain. If you guys want to check that out, definitely should, on his performance over the past 5 games in particular. He went from averaging 4.3 yards per touch for the first 9 games of the year to now over 6.3 currently over the last 5 games. Like he's hugely boosted that number up, and he's become way more of a factor in terms of actually moving the football down the field. Obviously, the running part of it's definitely been really impressive, especially. I think he's a good fit for this scheme, maybe a better fit than Jaylen Warren in a lot of ways, which is interesting. But, yeah, you got to give him a lot of credit there.
Yeah, and the strides are great. The contract is great. It was a great decision for the Steelers to bring him in. My only complaint, Shayne, isn't with Gainwell. I think Gainwell's doing everything in his power to be a productive football player. It's just I wish that they didn't have to go to him quite as often as they are required to do in order to find offensive success. I'd like to be able to go to receivers more often in this offense. Your tight ends even, just because you get more efficiency on a per target basis there. Still hard to complain about what Kenneth Gainwell has done. He's been one of the best and most consistent player on this offense in the second half of the season. One of the player that I really want to talk about, we just go to the offensive line now, Shayne. Dylan Cook.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
first NFL start was really impressive. And if you didn't really focus on him during the broadcast, I did cut up all of his pass block snaps on my X account at Tommy Jaggi. You can go check that out over there. That's good stuff. I mean, that's really good stuff. Passing off stunts flawlessly, anchoring. I mean, it's hard to be disappointed with anything that you saw in him. And Shayne, and for his efforts in his first NFL start against the Dolphins, earned an 89.9 pass block grade and was the highest graded player on the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 15. What do you make of Dylan Cook? And now, I mean, we thought that tackle situation going in, it's like, it can't be worse, right? You're down to your fourth option. You're literally your fourth option at left tackle. Broderick Jones on IR with a neck injury. Calvin Anderson out. Andres Pete got injured the previous week. And so you're down to Dylan Cook, who was thrust into the action in the second half of week 14 in his first ever NFL snaps of his career at 27 years old. And now he gets his first start. Looks like a really good football player. Is it just a one-off, Shayne? Is it a fluke, or is there something to get excited about here?
Well, I'll start with what I said on our post-game reaction show that we do here on the Steel Curtain channel. Definitely you guys should be looking out for after games to see what we're talking about there. And I immediately, when we talked about this, I felt like I needed to say it, even though I know it's very much a hot take. I know it's very much like being probably reactionary. I think he's the best tackle I've seen play for this team at left tackle in a while. Like, that game was the best game by left tackles that the Steelers have had in a long time. Does that mean he's going to be able to do it again against the Lions, who have Aiden Hutchinson and a bunch of other guys that they can throw at you? Probably not. But if I'm being fully honest with myself, I do not imagine that Broderick Jones or anyone else could have done a better job against the Dolphins than what Dylan Cook did. And I don't think that they would be very successful against the Lions either. So at this point, I think if he plays anywhere close to what he did against the Dolphins again, if he looks the same type of player, right? Very sound, technically, moves very well, all that good stuff. They should not take him out of the lineup no matter who's healthy. I don't think so.
Yeah, why not? I mean, after a performance like that, how do you send this guy back to the bench? If Andres Pete clears concussion protocol, he looked like a sloppy mess before that. I mean,
and I fear he might get put back in there because it's Tomlin.
Yeah, that's the thing. And it makes you wonder. It's like, all right, I hate to think that coaches have to be wiser than this, right? Just because he was a former high draft pick long ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that still sticking around like it did with Patrick Peterson? It did with Darius Slay.
That's the thing, is there's a lot of track record here of Tomlin going with the older, worse player because he's older and has pedigree. And that's what probably will happen if I had to guess. Like, I'm hoping that's not what happens. But if Pete is ready to go against the Lions, I would kind of be surprised if he isn't out there.
I would say, Shayne, after watching Cook's snaps several times through, there's just no way I'm putting him back to the bench until he comes back down to
absolutely
earth.
Not. Yeah, you have to see him struggle
and honestly,
first,
Shayne, that would include Broderick Jones is healthy. Like, if Cook plays this well, and if you're really set on winning a playoff game, he's the healthy guy. He's looking great. Let him show that he's not that guy first before you bench him. Because maybe, Shayne, just maybe you have something there. And again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here because it might be a one-off performance. It might just be playing a Miami Dolphins defense. But if you were to be good, that could save you a lot of draft capital in the future. It could save you a lot of headaches trying to figure out all the issues in Broderick's game, because that was a cleaner game. That one game from Dylan Cook was cleaner than any game that I've seen from Broderick Jones in the Steelers uniform.
That's the thing. And this is what I said when I talked about this in the postgame show, is regardless of what you think about whether he can actually do it again or whether it was a fluke or whatever else, he just looked like a better, more polished tackle than any point of Broderick Jones' career. That's just the reality of it. Now, you can say that the upside isn't there, and you can say that maybe it was a one-off in terms of the efficiency as a pass blocker and all that stuff. But Bradley Chubb has been legitimately a good player this year for the Dolphins overall, and he did nothing against him. It was zero ability to pass rush against Dylan Cook whatsoever. I just think that Broderick Jones has too many lapses for a team that's trying to win right now. So if they are truly all in, like if this is what they want to do, they want to try to win a playoff game this year. If that's all that matters to them, you cannot afford to go away from the hot hand if he keeps playing this well.
Yeah, Shayne, my expectations for Dylan Cook were so low because
all
right, this guy.
How do you have any?
Yeah, you stuck around like summer rosters for years, and you never ended up actually making the team and getting on the field. And now you finally get your first moment, and you're the fourth option. You're literally the last line of defense at this position, and you look like the best of the group so far. So again, we'll see. I'd love to see him get the start this week. If Andres Pete can clear concussion protocol, you can go ahead and be the swing tackle. You can be the backup, Pete, because I'm not benching Cook after what I just saw last week. I'm going to give him an opportunity to see if maybe there's something there. And maybe it's just one of those things, Shayne, where it took him the James Pierre route, the long road to making an impact. And we'll see where it goes from here. But I'm at least excited about it. The line did a good job overall. Can't complain about the performance. Again, it's not like you're going against the cream of the crop defense here in Miami, but hard to complain about what we saw from the offensive line. All right, let's move on and talk about the defense here real quick. I don't have much notes from the defense. I thought they did a great job for the first 3 quarters or so. After that, I didn't really care because the game, it really was, by all intents and purposes, out of reach for the Dolphins. Like, I know that Troy Aikman was getting upset there with like, what's Miami doing? Yeah, they absolutely could have sped things along. Like, you don't need to go huddle up. Like, I think they knew that they were mailing it in, but at the same time, it's like, all right, it's just, I didn't think that the Dolphins ever had a chance to come back into this game. So really good performance overall by the defense in this game, even with no TJ Watt there. So nothing to complain about.
Yeah, I think in general, this was about as good as you could expect given the circumstances. And I understand it's a little different than the past when they've been 1-10 in regular season without TJ. He's not quite the same impact player that he was, but still, the record is the record without him, right? So it's good to win any game without him. We'll see if they can do it again, like we talked about. But in general, not much to say here with the team. They didn't have to do a whole lot. I thought Highsmith did very well for being the top edge. Like, he's been able to do this in the past. I'm not that surprised by that. Malik Harrison had a really good game, honestly, too, which was interesting. Like, he kind of was able to come in there, and he even had some pass rush moments himself as kind of that like hybrid linebacker that he's been in the past.
He can come downhill for sure.
He certainly can. Cam was good, of course, as he always is. No problems there. Asante Samuel, he had the pick. Outside of that, like, he didn't really have to do a whole lot. Like, I thought he looked totally fine, though, so that wasn't an issue. Overall, again, not really much to complain about here. I don't see it. I think that they were able to, like I said, at least keep things afloat against a Dolphins team that struggles in this type of conditions. We'll see if they can do the same, though, against the Lions.
Yeah, and Jack Sawyer outsnapped Herbig in this game because of that hamstring issue, 28 snaps to 26 snaps. We'll see if Herbig is able to go in week 16, or if Watt can't either, we could be looking at Jack Sawyer and Alex Highsmith starting for this team with almost no depth to get after Jared Goff. And so we'll see what happens there. But the other player, Shayne, I do want to highlight here real quick is Joey Porter Jr. because he's on this quiet trend now of just allowing nothing essentially in the receiving game. And we can harp on his play style and his grabbiness all we want. But the fact of the matter is he gave up 1 reception in this game. And so now over the last 5 weeks, Shayne, let me see. I've got Joey Porter's numbers right here. Over the last 5 weeks now, Joey Porter has played 222 coverage snaps, has been targeted 16 times, but has allowed just 4 catches for 47 yards. That's 2.9 yards per target, 0.2 yards per coverage snap, only 16 yards allowed after the catch over the last 5 weeks. And this includes 4 breakups, no touchdowns allowed thanks to the Isaiah Likely reversal there, and a passer rating allowed of 39.5 in a 5-week span dating back to week 10. Doesn't matter what teams you play. Doesn't matter who you are. Those are really impressive numbers. And they don't get talked about enough because a lot of times it's when it comes to corners, it's about the splash plays or the highlight plays that you make. But in this case, not talking about Joey Porter is a great thing because the guy's just allowing nothing. 4 catches for 47 yards allowed. in a 5-game span is phenomenal.
Yeah, he's been very much more what we expected from him recently. And in general, I think there's been less of the grabbiness and less of penalties, and teams just aren't really challenging him because I think that they, even though James Pierre, especially before he got banged up, has been playing very well himself, there's just other places you can target on this defense that's more effective than trying to throw at Porter right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we're 3 games from the end of the season, and I believe Joey Porter has allowed 220 yards on the entire year so far, according to PFF's charting. That's good stuff from a cornerback. Even the top cornerbacks in the league have a hard time keeping the yardage totals and reception totals and yards per target down the way that Joey Porter has. And so even if he can't catch the football, which we know how his hands are, every time he's given that opportunity, there's still something to work with for sure there, and he's putting it on display. Anything from special teams, Shayne?
I felt like Waitman didn't have a very good game as a punter in this one. Honestly,
No, he didn't.
Kind of noticeably not very good. And then Boz didn't really have to do much of anything.
No, pretty easy game for him for sure.
Yeah.
All right. If you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. Shayne, let's take a few minutes and talk about Aaron Rodgers, because nothing is more important to the success of the 2025 Steelers than Aaron Rodgers and how he can perform the rest of the way and hopefully into the playoffs. The Steelers, if they get that playoff spot, they host a game in the playoffs. What version of Aaron Rodgers are we going to get? And we've seen 2 different versions so far. Not that they're necessarily a completely different player from each other, but I want to talk about the improvements that have been made and what exactly they've been, because this is what Rodgers has done in the previous 5 weeks compared to what he did the last 2 weeks. Now, Aaron Rodgers' stats per game, week 8 to week 13. He averaged 27.6 pass attempts per game, but only 16.8 completions per game, 163.2 yards per game, which is, you're talking like Kenny Pickett level stuff on the Steelers, Mitch Trubisky level stuff, 5.9 yards per attempt, which is very poor. Obviously, anything under 6 is considered very bad.
Oh yeah.
And then an 83.5 pass rating in a 5-game span before the last 2 weeks. Now, fortunately, that trend did not continue since week 14. Over the past 2 weeks, Rodgers has thrown 30.5 times a game, completed 23 passes per game. That's 75% completion compared to 60. A touchdown and a half per game, 254 yards per game. So we're talking about like a 91-yard difference per game, 8.3 yards an attempt, 116 pass rating compared to the 83.5 pass rating. Now, again, some of this had to do with the very small sample. It's only a 2-game sample. Some of it had to do with the teams that you played. You played the Ravens defense, the Dolphins defense. But Shayne, what other reasons could we look for as the reasons Rodgers might have improved during this 2-game stretch here?
I do think there's a lot that goes into it. I think that the 2 biggest things for me just watching it is one, quite frankly, the players around him are doing more with the football and getting open better the past 2 weeks. Like, it was really rough, that 5-game stretch where he was starting, in terms of being able to get the ball out to the playmakers effectively. It just wasn't really getting anywhere once they did get the football for the most part. Last 2 weeks, much more effective. In this game, he had, I think, over 175 yards or roughly about that in yards after catch. Vast majority of his yards, which that's just how this offense is designed, but it's still but it's working, opposed to before when they weren't getting those opportunities thrown with the football as much. That's one thing. 2, especially in the Ravens game, not so much in this game because he didn't really have to do it, but the ability to at least threaten down the field has opened up a lot of things for this offense. In particular, the middle of the field against the Dolphins, they were finally willing to target it for the most part. Had a bunch of plays in there, including the one to DK where he breaks tackle and scores touchdown. Like, it feels like he's, as long as Aaron's willing to at least make the defense think he's going to threaten down the field and can actually hit a couple of those plays, everything else starts to work so much better. And that's just how offenses work in general across the league. But Steelers for literally a month could not do it. They physically could not complete a pass past 20 yards. And I think doing that against the Ravens probably helped open up stuff against the Dolphins, even if they didn't end up completing one down the field.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's hard to put our finger on exactly where the issue lied because I don't think that Rodgers ever really lacked confidence. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers.
It's Aaron Rodgers,
still at 42 years old, has loads of confidence, but he has been more accurate down the field for sure. Particularly that Ravens game, like you said, he was hitting on all of those deep balls. I think of the deep pass down the right sideline to Metcalf, where ball's placed only place it could be. And even this last game, Shayne, not necessarily a deep pass, but just the confidence in the delivery and his strike over the middle of the field to squeeze that between the corner and the safety to Metcalf, who took it the rest of the way, broke a few tackles there. I think that's factoring into why he's been more successful these past few weeks. You need to see him still threaten teams down the field because it really does open everything else up when you're able to do that. So what must he do moving forward? That's it. That's exactly it. Is he's got to be able to keep the pressure on defenses down the field, help open up the running game, and you got to be able to throw the ball over the middle of the football field. I know we've said this so many times over the last 4 or 5 years now, but if you're not throwing the ball over the middle of the field, you're limiting your upside after the catch. And so even though Steelers rely on so many yards after the catch, it comes in such a different way when you're throwing a swing pass to the flats rather than like on a quick slant. Like you already on a slant, you've already got momentum. You're in the middle of the field. You got more real estate to work with rather than just throwing to the flats or throwing a screen where you're already on the sidelines. You don't have your momentum built up already. They've got to find ways to keep getting the ball over the middle of the field. And I know that Tomlin hates it because it does add risk there, more traffic with linebackers and safeties. But you notice it's not a coincidence that all of Pittsburgh's biggest plays come over the middle of the field, either by catch and run or by slinging it down the field, like the pass he had to DK deep down the field there. So that's where the Steelers have to keep pressing moving forward, is that area.
Absolutely. They just have to. It's how you win in the modern NFL. Like linebackers are one of the places you can target. Safeties oftentimes, especially if you're giving up middle of the field open looks, like you have to be able to hit those. And I think that, again, he shows that he can still do it. It's not a question of ability or maybe even willingness to some degree. I think it's just the offense doesn't try to go to that part of the field often enough. And it is just a philosophical thing, I think, where Tomlin doesn't want to take risk and he wants to make sure that he's not giving his defense, a harder time and all this other stuff. You can't play football that way anymore. You just can't do it. You have to be willing to risk it a little bit. Not saying you need to be reckless about it. Not saying you have to just completely ignore everywhere else on the field. But that's where so much of the big plays can happen and so much of the chain moving plays in particular can happen, where there's chances for the run after catch and all that stuff. So they just have to continue to be able to do that.
Yeah, Shayne, and that brings us to, is Rodgers' recent success sustainable? And I would say certainly yes, talking about what he's done recently, which is more or less manage the game. You're swinging the ball over to Kenneth Gainwell 7-9 times a game. Like you're hitting receivers on slants. He's not being asked to do anything particularly hard unless it's like those 2 or 3 throws that we just talked about per game that he's got there. So as long as he can continue to be very efficient in the offense that he's running right now, I think it's sustainable. Now, the question would be, is it good enough when you're going toe-to-toe in the playoffs with a Josh Allen? And the answer to that's going to be no. Like you're not going to have enough in your arsenal right there to be able to win that type of battle. The hope is that Rodgers can play like he did in week 14 and 15, but also the Steelers can get just enough from the rest of their team, not have any glaring weak spots that they could potentially snap that playoff streak and maybe make some waves in the postseason.
And I think more specifically to that, he needs to play. If he's going to play a player like Josh Allen, he's going to go up against a team like the Bills, who, as bad as their defense could be at times, Josh Allen can kind of just will them to victory with his legs and his arm. He has to play like he did in week 14 specifically and not 15, where he is hitting stuff down the field. He is making big time throws. He is doing those things. That's the type of performance he needs against those types of teams. if he's going to play like he did in week 15, it does have to be the right matchup, right? Where he can actually take advantage of a defense that maybe doesn't tackle as well and can give his guys more chances to run after catch and all that good stuff. So it just, again, it kind of comes down to the matchup that we get in the playoffs, but probably no matter what, the week 14 style of play is going to be what they need to go to if they want to have a chance to win.
Agreed, Shayne. All right. That is our topic on Aaron Rodgers. And from the highs, the heartbreaks, every headline, this is the Steel Curtain Podcast, your source for NFL talk, powered by SteelCurtain.com and the voices at Fansided. All right, Shayne, let's talk Steelers versus Lions, and we'll get to our predictions here to close out today's show. But the biggest storylines in Week 16, this is a big game for both teams, but no storyline I think is bigger, Shayne, than how much the Lions need this more than the Steelers do. And so we talked about the Steelers playoff odds. If Pittsburgh loses this game, they drop from a 60% chance of making the playoffs to a 55% chance. So it's not that big of a swing, because then what it means is really it just puts more importance on the Steelers-Ravens game in week 18, assuming the Steelers don't lose all three of their games, then you're in big trouble at that point. So it drops the Steelers a little bit. But for the Lions, who sit at a 38% chance currently to make the playoffs, their odds go all the way down to 15% if they lose this game. So extreme long shots if they lose to the Steelers at home this week. If they win, however, they go up to a 49% chance. So basically a coin flips chance to make it into the playoffs, and then maybe they can do something from there. They've still got Dan Campbell. They've still got explosiveness on offense. The Lions just need this game so much more than Pittsburgh does, Shayne.
They really do, and I think it is a big storyline because, again, the Lions are fighting for their playoff lives, whereas the Steelers are just trying to reinforce their already pretty high odds of making the playoffs, right? Is a different mentality that you come into this game with if you're the Lions versus the Steelers. I'm not saying the Steelers are going to try to win this game and they're not going to play harder or any of that stuff. Like, winning this game and putting more pressure on the Ravens to keep winning against teams that are frankly better than them at this point is what you want. You want this week 18 game against these two teams to not matter. Like, that's the ideal goal. But we all know, knowing these teams, it probably is going to come down to the week 18 game. So, and I think Steelers know that. I think the Ravens probably know that too. Like, it just feels like what's going to happen. So for the Lions, again, this is a playoff game for them, just through and through. It has to be. And I think the fact that these teams are both 8-6 is just, it tells you all you need to know about how the NFL works sometimes. Like, the Lions should certainly not be in the same position as the Steelers, and actually a worse one because of the conference they play in. So it's very interesting, but you're right that I think this is certainly the biggest storyline going into this game.
All right, Shayne, let's talk about some of the biggest matchups in Detroit this week, Steelers versus Lions. And I want to start with the running back position, Jahmyr Gibbs. We talked about Devin Achane last week, where, I mean, he still bursted off for 5 yards a pop. The problem is Miami couldn't stick with the run game because they ended up getting down so quickly in the second half of the game. So he only had 12 carries. But we see what explosive runners can do to this defense. They get out on the edge. Jahmyr Gibbs is the best in the business at doing that. And honestly, he's probably the best running back in the entire NFL this year.
So.
I mean, he's really good. Him or Jonathan Taylor, maybe. Like, he can really, really threaten you with his explosive play ability. And so the Steelers are going to have to find a way to bottle him up. If you don't, and you let him break a few of those 20, 30, 50-yard runs in this game, that will be the difference in this contest. Will Derek Harmon be back this week? We don't know at this point in time. He ended up missing another game with that knee injury. And so we'll see if the Steelers have enough depth, enough talent on that defensive line to keep the run game at bay here. And it's really the two-headed attack as well with their rushing attack. But I think that it starts right there, and you got to find a way to slow down David Montgomery, slow down Jahmyr Gibbs, and stop that run this week.
Yeah, this is just a nightmare matchup for this football team. Just an absolute nightmare. It does not get scarier than the Lions when it comes to running the football on a consistent basis. And against a defense that is banged up and frankly old and slow in most areas, this is Jahmyr Gibbs' playground for him, most likely. Like, this could get very ugly. And when I say that, I'm not trying to like be all doom and gloom about this game or anything like that, but just watch Jahmyr Gibbs play, and you tell me a worse player for the Steelers to have to play. I mean, he makes fast dudes look slow. That's the best way you can describe Jahmyr Gibbs. When he gets in the open field, he just glides in a way that very few players in the NFL can, even receivers that typically are going to be faster than running backs. He makes a lot of those guys look not so fast, right? Like, you can say the same thing about Achane and the fact that we were able to slow him down, but they have Jared Goff at quarterback and not Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not super concerned about them feeling like they have to go to the pass to win. I think they're going to lean on the run game, and I do think that seriously and very vehemently favors the Lions.
Yeah, Shayne, unfortunately, it's not just the rushing attack the Steelers have to worry about.
Nope.
We know that Amon-Ra St. Brown has been one of the most consistent threats over the middle of the field since coming into the league. And then Jamison Williams, who can really take the top off the defense.
He can burn.
He gets his. I mean, there seems like there's a play or two every game where he's just blowing past defenders down the field. So they're going to have to stay accountable for that. And his speed threatens deep. And so that could, help the Lions get their way when it comes to the rushing game. So it works in favor of each other there.
Yeah, just in general, I think that even though the Lions aren't the best team in the NFL or anything like that, I think that from a skill set of their top players' perspective, there might not be a worse matchup in the NFL for the Steelers. I'm not going to lie. Like, you just look across the board, they have a deep throw that can burn over the top of a defense that doesn't have a ton of deep speed. They have a running back that can run past everyone and make the Patrick Queens of the world not even get close to him because he's late getting over there or whatever he's doing. Like, it is just it's a nightmare. Amon-Ra St. Brown is somehow going to be covered by Malik Harrison 7 times in this game probably, and we're going to have to wonder what happened there. Like, that's what they do, and that's what the Steelers do to teams like this. So I just think, again, I'm probably spoiling my prediction of this game a little bit by the way I'm talking about it, but it doesn't feel good, Tommy. I'm not going to lie to you.
No, it doesn't. And I just don't think the Steelers match up well against this team at all. The team that can pass protect, team that can run, team that can beat you over the middle of the field, down deep. Middle of the field, that's been a struggle for the Steelers all season long. And Shayne, obviously, one more matchup that I want to highlight is Aiden Hutchinson, who's one of the best pass rushers in the league. I like what Troy Fautanu has done this year so far overall. But if there's one weakness to Fautanu's game, it's anchoring ability.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that Aiden Hutchinson does really well, is convert that speed to power from that wide 9 position off the edge, get ahead of steam, can blow right into his body. And I do have my concerns about that matchup for obvious reasons. I think regardless of who's playing tackle for you, everybody should be concerned about Aiden Hutchinson. I think they're going to have to lend a hand with him often, probably use Darnell Washington chipping over there.
You have to. He's one of the best players in the sport. You know, we talk about the Myles Garrett's of the world and all that stuff, and he's obviously phenomenal. But Aiden is right up there with the best of the best right now. He really is. So we're going to have a plan for him. I think that the way the tackles have played, especially if you look at what Cook did last week and what Fautanu's done all year, I think that they could be up for the challenge, but it is still a situation where you have to be wary of where he's at all times because you do not want to have him careening off the edge and just destroying Rodgers and getting a fumble situation, something like that.
And we talked about, obviously, Shayne, all the ways that the Lions can beat up on the Steelers. What advantage does Pittsburgh have, if any, in this game? Where can they exploit this team?
I think the linebacker coverage for this team is iffy at times. Anzalone's been a good player for them for a long time. Campbell's much more of a run defender. He's good instincts, but just doesn't have the foot speed and things like that. So if they can target the middle of the field a little bit in this game and take advantage of a beat-up secondary too, especially I think Rocky Sin might be starting for this team at this point at corner. You know, maybe you could try to find a way to get Metcalf matched up on him. Like, this defense will give up stuff. You know, we just saw them allow 41 points. It was to the Rams, so you know, we're not probably going to be able to replicate what the Rams did because we're not the Rams. But I do think the defense is susceptible to some degree. It's just, can the offense for the Lions be slowed down enough to give the Steelers offense a chance? I don't know about that.
That is the question, Shayne. And so that brings us to our Week 16 prediction, Steelers versus Lions. Who do you have in this game? I can tell which way you're leaning.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, it's not hard to see the reasoning. We just outlined it. This is a really, really tough matchup against a team that I still think is underrated. And Shayne, let me just fire off a few things here before we give our predictions. The Lions are 3rd in the NFL in DVOA. They are 4th in EPA. They're 8th in point differential. And so despite their 8-6 record, they're in a crowded NFC conference. And no, they don't have Ben Johnson anymore, but they're still a good and talented football team overall. I mean, their point differential, Shayne, is better than the 12-2 Denver Broncos. And so just to put it into perspective a little bit, Broncos have won a lot of those one-score games.
The Broncos are about as weird as it gets, so I can't.
It is weird. It's a weird. And the Broncos are the opposite way. They are not as good as their 12-2 record would indicate.
No, probably not. No.
But it just goes to show you that this is still a really solid Detroit Lions football team. And with that, Shayne, go ahead and give us your prediction for Week 16.
So I think that the Steelers are going to really get taken advantage of in this game in a lot of ways. I think this is going to be the game that hopefully kind of resets them and makes them realize, like, okay, we've been good the last 2 weeks. We have a long way to go still. And I'm going to take that as a positive as best I can. I'm hoping that just leads into a Browns game where they have to win and should win. And then a Week 18 game against the Ravens that, again, we think will ultimately be what determines this division. But I think the Lions are going to win 35-20. I think this is going to be an ugly, just beat down type of game by the Lions. I really do. It's trending that way in a lot of ways for me. I think, again, the Lions need this game badly. They need a chance to make the playoffs with this roster while it's still as good as it is. I think they're going to come out swinging, and I just don't know if the Steelers have enough punch to kind of keep that from happening to them.
Yeah, Shayne, and I mean, unfortunately, I agree with the way things are trending. Outside of Pittsburgh having a little bit of momentum here from the last two games.
They do.
Everything else favors Detroit. Home field advantage. The whole talent pool overall. The coaching decisions, the aggressiveness.
Mm-hmm.
They're backed up against the corner more than the Steelers are right now. They need this win more. And so all these factors combined, plus the fact that they have a great running game paired with a couple lethal receivers who can get you in the middle of the field, get you deep down the field. I just don't think the Steelers will have enough answers for this team this week. I agree with you. I think that has the potential to be a 2-score game. I'm going with the Lions winning 34-23. And again, giving the Steelers that wake-up call that, like we said, we'll try to take it as a positive. Maybe this is what they need entering the very final stretch of the season, these last few games here before the start of the playoffs. They have time to make adjustments after this, and we'll see where they go from here. I will say, Shayne, if the Steelers find a way to win this game, and let's just imagine, let's pretend for a second that it doesn't require 5 or 6 takeaways like it did to beat Indianapolis or to beat New England. If you can do it, if you can find a way to beat this Lions team, knowing how badly they need it, and you're like even in the takeaway department, there's a ton of reason to be optimistic about the Steelers because it's all about momentum down the stretch.
That would be the win.
I just have a hard time believing that that's what's going to happen this week.
Yeah.
But we will see. What do you guys think? Leave us a comment down on YouTube here down below. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. Keep this content going. We would like to bring you this every single week. These shows go up as a premiere on Wednesday evenings on YouTube, so make sure you check those out. Also, check out Josh Yorish's show live on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, Josh and Mark Powell go live post games, and Shayne typically joins them with the live post game show as well. So make sure you check out our YouTube channel live post game. Thanks for following us on the show. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Still Curtain podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.